Okay. So Shimon HaTzadik, after fighting for 40 years with the Hellenistic culture, finally passed away in the year 3448, or the year 273 BCE, and he was followed by his student Antigonus Ish Socho. Now, already you can see the spread of the Hellenistic culture, as he has Antigonus, the Gadol Hador, has a Greek name already, Antigonus. So now, Antigonus, he's going to, during Antigonus' lifetime, as he was what considered himself the cultural person as he was, and the educated person he was, he came up with the idea of, hey, you know what? Let's take the Jewish Bible, the Torah, and let's have it translated into Greek. So this brings us the story that we have in Megillah. In Megillah on Tet Amud Aleph 9a, where he took 70 elders, he put them in separate rooms, didn't tell them what his intention was, and he said, I want you to translate the Torah into Greek. And we said that by miracle, each one of them had the same intentions. They had a divine inspiration that any place where a literal translation may have made one to make a misinterpretation, they rephrased it. For example, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. You may come to think that Bereshit was an entity that created Elokim. So they all translated it as in the beginning of God's creation. Or as we have the tradition that Hashem, to show his humility, said to the angels, let us create man in our image. But they all translated it as, let me make man in my image, to show that there are no other entities. And there are a few other examples here. So the rabbis made this translation called the Septuagint. But the Chachamim of the generation looked at this as a travesty, because not only was the Torah now being readily publicly accessed to non-Jews, but it's also now, after maybe 100 years after Ezra spent all this time or sensitizing all of Tanakh and changing the script of Tanakh into a script that everybody was able to read and understand so they could learn. It's now put into Greek. And with everybody now getting into the new fad of becoming Hellenistic and Greek culture, will now decide that they're going to learn the Torah from the Greek writing. And they're not going to get the essence of the Hebrew language and the essence of the real learning from the Hebrew, because we know things are always lost in translation. As we know, the great Rabbanim always make juxtapositions and expounding on just the certain words that are used, and you just can't do that from a Greek translation. So this was done in the time of Antigonus Ish Socho. So Antigonus Ish Socho, he also left his way of combating the Hellenistic approach, and he left it with a very idealistic approach on how to combat the Hellenism. And it's a very ideal approach. It says, Hu haya omer, he used to say, Al tiyu ka'avadim hamishamshin et harav al menat lekabel pras. Don't be like a slave, a servant who serves his master in order to get a reward. Ella hevi hayu ka'avadim hamishamshin et harav shelo al menat lekabel pras. But you should be like a servant who serves his master in order not to get a reward. V'hi morei shamayim aleichem, and the fear of heaven should be upon you. Now, as the Rambam writes, everybody knows what the clear explanation here. The idealistic approach to serving God is you're doing a mitzvah, you're doing God's will, not because you're doing it out of reward, you're doing it because of your love of God. Of course you're getting the reward, but that shouldn't be your motivation. And you should always have the fear of Hashem upon you. You should always have this fear upon you, which is directly opposite the Hellenistic approach, where they felt that there was no reward or there was no reason to do any of God's will, because nothing was going to happen in the future world anyway, and there was no future world anyways. So he's saying, okay, you don't want to believe that anything's going to happen in the future world? Still, do it out of the love of God. So, the only problem is he had two Hellenistic students who were looking for any excuse to get away from Rabbinic Judaism, named Tzadok and Batos, which from them came the Saddukim, the Sadducees, and the Batusim, the Bosnians, which from henceforth we'll just refer to as the Sadducees. And they, since they're already Hellenized, they took this as an excuse to say, oh, you're saying there's no reward in the next world? You're saying there's no reward? Oh, you see, Hellenism is right. There's no reward in the next world. And they started this movement called the Sadducees, and which will very quickly rise to great power because of course the easy way out and not having to listen to the Rabbanan becomes very popular among who? The wealthy and the influential. Because if you have the money, you have the power. You get to bribe. You get to be on the side of whoever's in charge. So very soon we're going to see that the religious Jews are not only going to have to fight the Samaritans, they're going to have to fight against Samaritans, they're going to have to fight against the Sadducees, they're going to have to fight against Hellenistic Jews, and in not so long, they're also going to have to fight against early Christians. So they're going to have their hands full. So it was at this point at time also in Antigonus Ish Socho where Ptolemy II died and Ptolemy III took over, and through corrupt ways, Antigonus Ish Socho wasn't a Kohen, so he couldn't take over the Kohen Gadol. So Elazar, who was the son of Shimon HaTzadik, was the Kohen Gadol, but political power was taken away from him, and Chonyo was the tax collector. Now the tax collector was the man because he raised the money, gave it to the leader, and you go, you hook me up, I hook you up. Now there's a story that for some reason Chonyo didn't give the tax money to Ptolemy. So Ptolemy kind of got a little upset at him. So Chonyo sent to plea on his case Yosef ben Tuvia. And he pleaded on his case so well that Ptolemy actually made Yosef ben Tuvia the tax collector, but he still let Chonyo keep the political power. So at that time, Elazar was the Kohen Gadol. Chonyo had the political power. Yosef ben Tuvia was the tax collector, and Antigonus Ish Socho was the religious leader. This is the last time that the religious leader in himself is going to be from one person. After this point, it's going to break up into two positions called the Nasi and the Av Beit Din, where the Nasi was basically the religious political head, and the Av Beit Din was the head of the Sanhedrin. They will work together, but they will at different times have separate roles. And this is where we're going to leave off today, where they are at the end. This is towards the end of their. This is the end of their subservience to the Ptolemaic Egyptian Empire. In our next lecture, with God's help, we will talk about the Syrian Empire taking over Empire, taking over Eretz Yisrael. We will discuss the first group of Nasi and Av Beit Din that took over, and we will reach into the Hanukkah story, with talking about everything that you didn't know about the Hanukkah story. In conclusion, if anybody has any questions on what we have discussed today or in a previous lecture, you can reach me at rabbi.moshe.orlovsky@gmail.com. If you would like to reach our esteemed Rosh Yeshiva, you could reach him at rabbigaon@gmail.com. And if you would like to contribute or donate to our yeshiva, to our daily functioning or our communal events, we could be reached at yeshiva@etzion.com. Till next time, Kol Tuv.